Welcome to Beyond the Window. This podcast is all about you helping you think beyond the product and focus on the skills, mindset, and strategies that help drive real success in sales and dealer partnerships. And welcome back to the show, guys. Thank you for picking up right where we left off in episode 2. And I wanted to our new host, Stephanie Carvello. So welcome to the podcast. I think you're going to do an incredible job with us.
Thank you, Shannon.
All right. Very good. Hey, guys. Well, we're kind of jump right into it. So last episode, we're really talking about how we can really ask better questions, right? Go a little deeper, asking the right questions to unlock some real opportunities and really kind of move you, from that vendor into that business advisor.
And I think that's awesome, Shannon. Like, I'm glad that I'm coming in at this point because the first couple episodes really laid some groundwork. But let's be honest, better questions only work if the dealer really truly trusts who they are doing business with. And that's how you're really going to get honest answers from your dealers and from your customers.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, you're right. You can ask great level 2 and you can have the fantastic questions. We have great questions that we listed out there for you guys, but that's right. There's no trust in that relationship. You're just asking questions, right? So you'll just kind of still get surface answers, like, hey guys, yeah, things are good. Oh, I'm pretty busy. Or yeah, no complaints. All's good.
Yeah. And, great surface conversation to have. I mean, it's important to every meeting, to every call, but if that's all it is, that type of conversation is really not going to give you a whole lot of context or insight as to what that dealer needs. So if you don't have that insight, you're not going to be able to help them. And if you're not going to be able to help them, it really means that nothing in that relationship is going to change.
That's true. So kind of reminds me back up to the house that we leverage within our organization. So we're kind of building that foundation, really the underneath of everything that we're building on. So, and it's all leaning and driving towards trust. So really, how do we build it intentionally? How do we protect it, right? And then, why it directly impacts your share of wallet.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, dealers don't really buy from who has the best product out there in the market. They really buy from who they trust, from the reps that show up day after day, week after week, helps them solve their problems, and they really have full confidence in to help drive their business. That's what really moves the needle forward.
Right, exactly. So so that's a great intro. So let's go ahead and just dive into it a little bit and kind of really, out there, and let's just kind of get a good what trust really means.
Awesome. I think it would be good if we cleared something up right off the bat. When we think about trust, like building trust itself is not a soft skill. Trust is a revenue driver. Building trust, establishing trust with one of your partners, one of your dealers, that's really what's going to make that business stand out from anything else. So it's not a soft skill. And I think that a lot of times we kind of get hung up on what soft skills are and what soft skill development is, but trust is an actual genuine revenue driver.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. So when a dealer truly trusts you, 3 things kind of happen. So ideally they share more information, right? Because about where they're buying, who, all this, the cost of things, the challenge, and they kind of lean into bringing you early in decisions, like they have a project coming up or they have a new salesperson, something like that. But then they also just flat out give you more business, right? I mean, so, as opposed to, not at this point, they're looking at your share of wallet right there and is growing based off of those 3 things that they bring into the more often when that trust truly happens.
Exactly. And this is where it ties into everything that you talked about in episode 2, right? Like just the importance of asking insightful questions, open-ended questions. When you've established trust with a customer, those answers are going to be so much more honest, and you're going to learn so much more about the business. And that's ultimately what you want. You want that honesty from your customers so that you can go from there and build recommendations that are going to make a difference in their business.
Right. So makes me think back, okay, so what does a low trust look like and what does kind of a high trust look like? So kind of a low trust, kind of what we said about earlier is like, yeah, everything's good. Yeah, no, we're busy, man. We're super busy. Hey, yeah, there's really no issues. But when you flip it and what does really, a high trust sound like? It's more of like, hey, Stephanie, I'm struggling here. Or, hey, we're losing jobs because of this. Here, or let's say another one like my team isn't quite confident in motorization, or pick a topic. So that way that's a high trust conversation at that point going on.
Yeah, you're 100% right. That second conversation, that second list of questions that you just mentioned, that's where growth lives. When you start hearing questions like that, or when you start hearing comments like that from an account, it is an immediate flag that they are looking to you to help drive them to a solution. And they're
Right.
looking for your expertise or your guidance in how to handle that stuff. So that's the real difference between a TSM who's just kind of treading water with an account and not really getting too far with it versus someone who's actually building real momentum.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. So it just makes me think back to kind of a phrase that, trust is the gateway to opportunity. If you're not being brought in into those real conversations, price challenges, competitive pressure, staffing issues, kind of where they're losing jobs, you're really not in that trusted position yet. So that's definitely something to pay attention to.
You're exactly like, we all love to have good meetings with our customers, right? We want to have the pleasant, friendly conversation. No one really goes looking for pushback or difficult conversations. But if all you're hearing from your customers day after day is sort of that surface level, oh, the weather's been great. Yeah, business is great. There's no issues, there's no problems. It's kind of a red flag, right? Like that's going to indicate that there's some sort of trust signal that's really not there. So, that's thankfully, fortunately, something that we can change. It's something that we can develop, and we have tools at our disposal, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode, as to how we can establish that trust and how we can have those conversations beyond just, what the score of the soccer game was yesterday.
Yeah, which
or the day before.
wasn't a good score, but that's a different topic, a different story, a different podcast at this point. So, which is fine. So I guess it's time to bring in our guest, and we wanted to bring in someone who really sees this playing out every single day. He knows exactly what trust looks like. He is in dealer relationships and knows what's happening when it's missing. So we want to welcome Brad Trevillian to our podcast. He's our senior vice president and GM of dealer business units. So welcome to Beyond the Window, Brad.
Hey Shannon. Hey Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here, Brad.
Yeah.
Fair warning. We're gonna get a little. We're gonna ask you some tough questions, and really excited to hear what you got to share with us.
You stretched out. You've done all your yoga moves this morning, so you're good. So no. All right.
I'm in good shape.
Okay, good.
It's one of my favorite topics. I appreciate y'all inviting me to chat about it.
All right. Well, so we have been talking about trust. Really, what does that trust look like within the dealer relationship? So I guess kind of maybe a first question is, in your eyes, what does a high trust really look like?
Yeah. So when I think about trust, I think about it on kind of two axes. So I think about character, what type of integrity you have, how you're made up as a human. And I think about competency. Can you get a given task or activity done? And so I think about trust in that framework. That's pretty easy to trust somebody that has high character, but may be more challenging if they're not competent, and vice versa. And so that's how I typically frame it, Shannon.
Okay. No, that's great. I mean, the competency, I love that. And I love the character parts. I mean, you really think of those two. I mean, you're putting them in an axis together. So that's interesting. I wasn't thinking of it in that realm. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense.
And I stole that. That's not my invention. About 2 decades ago, I read a book by Stephen M.R. Covey called The Speed of Trust. And he really describes 13 behaviors of high trust relationships. And that's his framework that I've stolen shamelessly for 20 plus years now.
Well, that's
but
good.
that's okay. You're giving credit where it's due. So
yeah, no, it's great. I mean,
we're
I
all
was going to
here
write
to
down
share
by
and learn
Brad.
from each other.
Brad said this. I was writing that down, but I'll hold off on that one. So that's good.
What kind of behaviors did he talk about? Like, is there anything specifically that stood out to you, Brad, in terms of a behavior that you really think is critical to building trust in our type of work environment?
Yeah. He broke it down between character-based behaviors, competency-based behaviors, and a few that kind of cross the chasm there. A few that stand out to me is talk straight. So a lot of us have used the term direct with respect or straight talk with respect, but the ability to say the thing that needs to be said, I think that's critically important. I think another one on the competency side that has always stood out to me is just the ability to deliver results, people that get done what they say they will get done. And then the one that resonates the most with me is actually his last behavior that he describes, kind of the chasm crossing behavior of extending trust. In order to build high trust relationships, you have to be an individual that's willing to extend trust to others as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it kind of goes back to, we're all back in, Florida some time ago this year. The dates all get confused, but I think one of the things we listen to, it says that you need to trust like your TSMs and said, I trust that you're going to make the right decision. And I know you've kind of turned that, back to the regionals as well. I'm trusting you guys running your business and that type of thing. So that's 100% true. I mean, that just kind of jumped out at me as we're talking there.
It's like kind of like that whole concept of if you want to be respected, you have to give respect first. If you want to be trusted, you absolutely need to provide trust and give trust as well. So that's awesome.
That's true.
Awesome.
So looking at it right now, so you've been out, you've ridden with some reps and such, and how, from your viewpoint, because you see it a little different from what we do or the reps do. So how are you seeing, like, say, a TSM walks in and kind of unintentionally breaks that trust? Where does that happen, and how do you kind of, respond or react or recover from that?
Yeah, I'll speak to the TSMs, but I think this applies very broadly to all of us and all of our roles. One of the challenges, I think, is overcommitting. So promising something that maybe you don't have full control or autonomy over, rather than saying, yeah, I believe that we can make that work. Let me check with my team. I think that's probably a common mistake that many of us, myself included, make. I think it's really tempting in sales, having spent a career in sales now, either sales or sales leadership. It's really tempting to shield a customer from bad news. I find that actually the opposite is where trust is really built and established, when you can have the tough conversation, share that early, especially if it's significantly impactful to them or their business. Maybe another one that's somewhat unique to sales, or at least the challenge is overly indexed to sales, is confusing activity with value. I remember when I was brand new to selling, I had a customer, a large insurance agency had a large commercial building in the area that I was covering, and I was selling commercial heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and associated services. And I was spending a lot of time working on this customer's account, and my sales manager at the time recognized that while I was producing a lot of activity, I wasn't adding much value to the account. And he cleared my calendar for me on a Friday afternoon and told me to go wash Bernie's car. Bernie was my primary contact there. And I was very confused and didn't understand how that, none of my sales training that I invested in at that point had said anything about doing something like washing a customer's car. And it was a somewhat of a silly activity, but it reframed for me that every interaction that I had with a customer, there was a sort of a trust bank account that was being established. And the more that you do to make deposits into that account, the better your relationship is. And that was his way of reframing that for me. Conversely, when you have a stumble on the trust spectrum, one withdrawal from that account is worth way more than a single deposit. So yeah, quick anecdote on my early selling days.
All right.
It's a
So,
great
so you actually
analogy.
did wash his car. You did the wash on, wash off. You did all
Yeah.
that fun stuff, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
encouraging any of our sellers to spend any time washing cars, but it was a good mental activity for me.
It's
Yeah,
definitely
no,
thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely, yeah. So I like the trust bank part of it, because I mean, yeah, I think you're right. It takes a very long time to build up that you know, your value inside that trust bank, but it can diminish extremely quickly with just a small little misstep, like you said. Maybe you're not doing, maybe overcommitted, didn't do what you said, something like that. So that's very interesting. So excuse me.
Yeah. Awesome.
So sorry, Sophie, go ahead.
Thinking along timelines, like we have such a wide variety of different personalities that we work with, that our TSMs work with day to day. Is there a timeline that you think that trust sort of falls within? Like, is there ever a point where, you know, we're trying so hard to build trust with an account, they're not really giving us time? Is there ever a time to just sort of check out? Or do you think that trust is something that ultimately does have a timeline, and, you know, over time, exhibiting different behaviors, such as, you know, talking straight, will ultimately lead you to that end goal of strengthening that relationship?
Yeah, great question. I had like lots of answers, but I'll try to keep it succinct. I think there is a continuum. So I would break it down in terms of credibility. I think you can gain sort of what I would call credibility trust in minutes, hours, days, weeks, probably a shorter time frame. And that's really, this person knows what they're talking about, or this person has relevant experience to help me, things like that. I think maybe the next tranche of trust would be around reliability. So this person consistently does what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
This person delivers results, and that probably takes months, maybe a year or years to establish, depending on how versed the other individual or the other team is on extending trust. And then I think there's maybe a third realm that a lot of us reach in personal relationships. If we're lucky, we reach in business relationships of sort of vulnerability trust, where I can share things that are difficult with this individual or this team. And that is likely years before you establish that. I do think it's important, though, to think about when we see what we observe, or what we assume to be a lack of trust, that we think about that first behavior that I referenced of talking straight. I think it's perfectly acceptable once you've given, you know, enough repetitions that you've got a solid baseline for your observation. I think it's perfectly acceptable, even encouraged, to have that conversation with the customer, which sounds a lot like, hey, here was the situation, I did XYZ, here's what I observed in you. To me, that feels like maybe we don't have the most trusting relationship. Am I accurate there or not? Can you give me your perspective? I think that would be demonstrating talking straight around the establishment of trust.
Yeah, I think that's great.
That's
That goes back to having some of those tough conversations and kind of taking it to a different direction, expecting a different result. So that's a tough question to ask dealers. I like that. Jotted that one down.
Yeah, because when you said that, it also goes both ways, right? So, you know, having that dealer say those difficult conversations back to you, you know, bringing up where they're telling you something you really don't want to hear, or you weren't expecting to hear, or something at that same point. So it's kind of a nice two-way street. When you said that, it made me think of, well, what's the reverse of that? So
I'm really glad you brought that up, Shannon, because I think one of the biggest blessings that we can have as a seller is when there is a problem. It's very counterintuitive. But when someone in Springs lets you down, when the market lets you down, when logistics or transportation lets you down, it's how you handle those problems that really can establish trust. So I'd encourage everyone that when you see a problem, trust me, I see them daily. I'm sure you see them daily, and they're much more challenging for our TSMs to manage because they are in front of the customer on an hourly basis. But when you see them, try the mental reframe of, holy cow, I got one on the hook. This is an opportunity for me to build trust with how I manage this challenge with this customer.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, I mean, what's really standing out to me from this conversation is that trust really isn't built in just one big moment, right? It is small, consistent actions over and over again, showing up, demonstrating your expertise, talking straight, not overcommitting. Like that is really how we start to build this foundation.
Right. And the flip side of that, it's lost the exact same way. So, it's one missed follow-up call, one broken commitment. You didn't follow up. You didn't do what you said you're going to do. You showed up, you're unprepared, you're kind of wasted their time. You took a step back. It's not, bells and whistles flying off. It's just very quiet. You just, all of a sudden you're a little further away than you were yesterday because of things you didn't do.
Exactly. Brad, any final thoughts? Any parting words of wisdom?
No, I just encourage the team to be very intentional about thinking about your trust bank accounts with each of your clients. Think about every interaction that you have with those customers. Are you adding more value than you're detracting? Simple things like the sales process that we coach to of being inquisitive and asking questions about their business. At its essence, that is detracting value from a business owner, right? It's intentional, and we want you to do that. But that is detracting value from them. You're taking their time to educate you on something. Now, the end goal there is that you are able to leverage that into creating more value for them eventually. And but think about your interactions very intentionally as it relates to that, and make sure that you're working toward a higher trust relationship with each of them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's
words of wisdom. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brad. We're both so happy to have you on here today, and we will definitely be calling you back at some point.
Oh yeah.
Appreciate you inviting me. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right.
Awesome.
That was great. Fantastic. Always love Brad's perspective. He gives such an enlightening view of everything, which I really enjoy. So we've got some theories. We kind of talked a little bit. So I don't know. Let's put it all together and see what we come up with. Let's kind of get to a practical standpoint.
Let's do it. Time to get practical.
All righty. Let's get practical. Fantastic. All right. So trust isn't random. It's not chemistry. It's like, oh, I just feel trust when I walk up. No, it's not that. It's built through repeatable behaviors. And kind of looking at it, there are, I kind of break it down into 3 drivers. And I want you guys to kind of think of through each drivers and then kind of see how we can do better. So Brad mentioned several of them. So number 1, credibility. Number 2, reliability. And then number 3, intent. So Stephanie, what do you think? I mean, credibility, I know Brad mentioned a little bit, but kind of give me some of your insight.
I mean, when I think about credibility, there's a few different things that lead to a credible conversation, a credible relationship, and demonstrating your strength in those areas. So number 1, you have to have strong product knowledge, right? I mean, if you're going to have credibility with any customer out there, you have to show them that you really do understand the product that they're going to be selling, because if they're going to be coming to you for questions, they need to have the confidence that you're going to be able to answer those questions, or at least get the answer if you don't have them directly.
Yeah, because you're right. You don't need to have all the answers, right?
Exactly.
No? Right. You just got to know where to find them, right?
Where to find them.
But I think Brad mentioned also, be honest. Hey, I don't have that
Yeah.
answer, Stephanie, but I'll get back with you soon. Sorry.
Exactly. Exactly. I think market awareness is really important as well. And
Okay.
it's we our company is so large. We have so many different territories that we cover. No two territories are the same. And although there are absolute general market trends that we see from one region to the next, there's still an individuality that really is important. And I think with a TSM or an RSM, we all need to really understand our individual markets and be able to speak to some of the trends that we're seeing in the markets. So, just having a genuine understanding of what's going to be driving a dealer's profitability, I think that's a very important aspect of building credibility in any relationship, in any
Right.
situation.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think I think a lot of times we are so in the middle of running our region, running our territories, that we don't take a moment to understand what that territory is. I think you said, like, knowing the market is key. What's selling in, what's selling in, in Canada is different from what's selling in Texas. It's a
Exactly.
totally different view. And if I say, hey, I'm going to sell all these cellular shades in Texas, well, it's probably not going to be a top seller for me, and it's going to go kind of down the tube. But again, knowing your market, I think, just kind of leaning into that a little bit, being extremely credible about that. So I think that's a great view. So what I say number two, reliability, right? Mm-hmm. So I like this one a lot, Stephanie, because it's kind of how you are kind of put together, how I'm kind of put together. Whenever I say something, I want to make sure I do that something.
Right.
And I want to make sure I follow up, and they know, hey, like, my team knows they can count on me. If they ask me a question, I'm going to follow up. I'm going to get the answer. Same thing we do with the dealer. If the dealer comes to you and says, hey, you said X and you didn't do it, well then, okay, well then, now you took a withdrawal from that trust bank. So I really like that. And it's just easy. It seems so simple, but it's an easy thing to do. Just say it and do it, right?
Yeah. And it kind of it ties back to what Brad was saying about ensuring that you're not overcommitting, right? Like me, our TSMs, everyone, we all know what our schedules look like. If you're sitting in front of a customer and it's Monday morning and you have 2 solid days with back-to-back meetings, a ton of road time, and the customer, there's an action item that's going to come out of your call that you're going to have to deliver back to your customer. Set realistic expectations as to when you're going to get back to them, right? Like, don't tell them, hey, I'm going to get this to you on, later this afternoon, when realistically, it probably won't be until Wednesday evening until you have time to actually get that information together. So it also goes back to, the whole conversation or the whole analogy about that trust bank account. If you set unrealistic expectations and then you don't follow through on them, you're just withdrawing from that bank account. You're not going to be depositing anything into that relationship, because the dealer is going to be looking at their clock on Monday afternoon saying, well, hey, so-and-so told me that they were going to get me this information and I still don't have it. So we definitely don't want to overcommit, especially knowing, what our schedules are. So saying something like, honest, like, hey, you know what, next couple of days, I'm going to find time to get this together, pull this together for you. I'll have it to you on Wednesday evening or Thursday morning. That will automatically set a much more realistic tone and a more positive for tone for that conversation with the customer on the delivery, right? So, if you have the opportunity to send it ahead of Wednesday evening, perfect. You'll look like a superstar.
Yeah, they're not going to be mad at you. Say, well, you said this was Thursday. You're giving it to me. Now it's Tuesday and you already have the answer for me. I'm very upset with you. They're not going to say that. Of course not. So again, what was it? Under promise, over deliver. Is
exactly.
that how they say it? So so I think that's great. And again, doing what you say, I think that's fantastic. And you mentioned constantly withdrawing from the bank of trust. If you get to that below zero number, your share of wallet just went through the floor, because you no longer have that credibility, you no longer have that reliability, which in turn goes to number 3, being, what is the intent? Are you here to help me grow? Are you,
Yeah.
what is it that you're here to do? I was, if you don't mind, so I was thinking about, I was working with a rep, last year, and they were telling me all this, the fun stuff. They were interacting with the dealer. And I said, well, walk me through what were you doing? So they were saying, well, I went in and we had this new product launch. I went ahead and opened, showed them all of our cool stuff that we got coming up. And I just kept showing them this, and hey, look at this sample. I got this, and I got this hand sample over here. And hey, man, this new digital marketing tool is fantastic. And then, I said, okay, well, that sounds like it's a great call. And then she says, yeah, but then I did that a couple of times in a row. And I was like, oh, you did? And she was like, yeah. So then at that point, what happened is that all of a sudden the guy he says, look, okay, fine. He says, can you put the sample books away? Can you put that stuff away? That's not important to me right now. I'm losing people nonstop. I can't get people to retain, I can't get my salespeople to be here more than a few months. I need help with that. Can you help me with that? And then she just kind of looked at him and stopped. And at that point, she closed her sample book, and she said, hey, okay, tell me all about it. Let's figure out a plan. Let's do it. So you could tell that dealer was shocked, that she stopped doing, here's my pre-canned, show up, throw up kind of, situation. And at that point, the dealer's like, oh, you really do care about me. That trust level now went up. The credibility went up. And now you say, I'm here for you. Okay, I know that sounds corny, but I'm here for you. But let's talk through it. Let's see what we can do. We're a partner. Let's do this.
Yeah. And I will say, if we were to tie that back to what was covered in episode 2, asking questions right off the bat about what direction, the dealer was hoping for that meeting to go into, that could have potentially avoided a lot of, perhaps the stress that they were feeling at seeing all the sample books and all the different things, but it's a great learning experience. So, I mean, that's good. I've seen it happen on the flip side too, right? Like I've seen a situation, or not recently, this was a TSM who's no longer with us, but I remember a situation where we had a new paint store that was opening up, and this was brand new owner. They were just so gung-ho, ready to dive in head first, had no industry experience at all. They had never ever sold a shade. They had never really sold paint. And TSM goes in and this new dealer is just drinking from the fire hose, and they're like, you know what, I want you to come back and I want you to do a 3-day training with all of my salespeople on everything that there is to know about springs, about how to sell these blinds. And unfortunately, that's sort of what the TSM did, was go back and embark on this huge training marathon covering every single product that we had under the sun. And all you see after a couple of hours is just a bunch of eyes glazing over. So there's a lot of value in being the industry expert, and in a situation like that, saying, well, you know what, I'm so happy that you're so excited about getting on board with us and learning all that there is to know, but why don't we take it step by step? Instead of doing a 3-day training, why don't I come and spend 2 hours per product? Let's start with solar roller. Next week, I'll come back and I'll spend 2 hours with your people and train them on how to sell our solar roller program. And then once they're comfortable with that, come back and do cellular. So we really do need to listen to what the dealers want, but not be afraid to have some of those tough questions or push back a little bit and say, this probably isn't the best direction for your business, but here's what I recommend instead. And this is the reason why.
Yeah. Because at the point they're looking at it and going, okay, they're just not there to make a buck off me.
Exactly.
They truly want me to succeed. And if I just dump on you, it's not going to be successful. You're going to go to, and you're going to say, oh, window covers are terrible, I'm never going to sell them again, kind of thing.
Which is what happened with this account. I will say, after this 3-day marathon, this account became so overwhelmed that they really just decided to focus on paint. But, that ultimately, I think, is the real difference between a TSM who is just moving product versus a TSM who is really interested in the success of a business. So
Right.
That
Okay.
that's really where the intent
No,
shows.
exactly. That's true. So kind of wrap. So, just on so credibility, reliability, intent. I think we need all three. But when you do that, something really shifts, and you stop being a vendor at that point. Like you said, you start being an advisor, start being a partner with them, and that's a completely different business, relationship, business partnership. I like the word relationship, but I like partnership better because it's more of a two-way street at that point.
It is totally. I mean, partners get called first, right? When there's a big project on the table, that partner is the one who's going to be brought into the loop to help secure or help win a project. Partners are going to have those tough conversations, and tying it again to something that Brad said earlier, if you're a true partner with a dealer, your dealer is going to show some vulnerability, right? Like they will reach out to their partners and say, hey, I really need help with this situation or with this issue, versus, someone who they don't really feel comfortable with and haven't established that trust with, right? You're going to show vulnerability to your partners, and that vulnerability ultimately will result in stronger trust because you're there to support and help that problem.
Yeah. That's where your share of wallet grows, right there. Boom. Put a star on it. There it is. All right. So let's do just a couple of quick scenarios, if you don't mind. So let's, so I'll think of the first one. So I always like to go first, I know I'm from the South, gentlemen, usually let you go first, but I'll take the scenario A. This is the low trust one, because I know you're all into high trust. You can do that one. So let's think of a low trust. So a TSM walks into, and that reminds me of a joke every time. So a TSM walks in with a penguin and a duck, and no, seriously, but I'm sorry, I get sidetracked sometimes. So a TSM walks in, and he shares some product updates. He talks through the latest promotions. Hey, we have this, we've got this new Zigbee, that, and dealer nods, stays polite. Everything is kind of really surface level, right? Unless you're surfing, you want to go a little below the surface level there. The TSM wraps up, walks out, shakes his hand. Fantastic. Man, I crushed that, that sales call. Man, I did so great. The dealer really likes me.
Yeah. But has anything really changed, right? Like, has anything actually come out of that conversation? And
you brought it. Why'd you have to be so real? You didn't have to bring it that way. Come on. Jeez,
well,
I thought I was doing a great job.
That's what I do, Shannon. That's who I am. I mean, we got to keep it realistic here. I mean, like I said earlier, like that is really part of any conversation. When you walk into any meeting, there's always going to be the chit chat in the beginning. How are the kids? How's the weather? Who are you rooting for in the FIFA World Cup? Like, there's always going to be some of that, and that's important. Like, I don't want to say that type of chatter doesn't have a place, because it definitely does. But if that's all it is, you're not really getting any insight. You're not learning any new information. You're not getting any commitments. You're not moving forward. So, that a dealer might really, really like you, but if they're not really giving you more substance in those meetings, you're not moving the needle. You're not really getting anything from the business, and you're not gonna be able to make solid recommendations, which ultimately is, it's just gonna hurt in the long run.
No, you're right there. So it's really not the relationship, because hey, they know everything about you, everything about them. You guys talk about it, you're friendly, but it's really more of a trust problem. They don't trust you enough to give you the important information to grow the share of wallet, to grow their business and help them, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at the same scenario. Same dealer, not same scenario, new scenario, but same dealer, same TSM. They go into their meeting, and after the chit chat, after the small talk in the beginning of the meeting, they dive in and they start asking questions that are designed to really get some information. So, they might say something like, hey, last time, I was here, or last time we spoke, you mentioned you were having some struggles. You mentioned that your installation timelines were a challenge, or you were mentioning to me that you're really struggling to use the order portal, or you don't really understand how to use our order portal. Did that get resolved? Is that something that's still a problem for you? Is that something that I can, maybe help you with since I'm here today? Asking questions like that and sort of probing the dealers to open up, I think that is where you really start to build some of that high trust with dealers, as opposed to just asking, keeping the conversation at like a service level. You're trying to really dig deeper.
Right. And I can imagine in that situation, as the TSM's asking those type of questions, the dealer just probably pauses and goes, huh, you remembered what we talked about last time, or
Totally.
it could have been 2 times ago. And they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you truly remember that.
Yeah.
And now you're asking, is that still an issue? And then so you're trying to build that credibility back up and say, well, hey, let me see if I can help you with that. And going out of your way to, which is not, that's just normal conversation and being a normal person, but we don't always do that at that point. So, you're moving that conversation into more of a trust, and they go, man, that TSM really wants to help me grow.
Yeah. And I want to make, one distinction here, right? We're not, when we're talking about tying back and demonstrating that we've been listening to our customers, listening to our dealers, we're not talking about things like, how do they take their coffee, right? Like that's important. Sure. If you're going to bring them a coffee next time, yes, you want to file away somewhere. They like it with 1 cream, 2 sugar, whatever. But, asking them about things that really made a difference or potentially could have had an impact on their business, that's where you're really going to start to build the trust. Like, hey, you mentioned to me that you were going to send your new salesperson out on a ride along with one of your tenured sales reps. How did that go? A lot of times customers won't expect you to remember information like that, but that's why it's so important to make notes, whether it's in your phone, whether it's on CRM, make notes after every call so that you can remember these little things and refer back to them down the road.
Yeah, no. And I like the old fashioned way of pen and paper.
Pen and paper.
That's always good, because when you write it, you see it, you do it, it's a little bit different. But at that point, you're right. You're helping, you're solving a problem. You're not just presenting a product, because what if they don't even care about the product and it's not something they sell? But you're not just hitting the talking points, and you're actually helping.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's the key. Yeah, and I think that's the key where every TSM wants to be. You and I want to be in that same scenario. So again, how do we continue to do more of that and less of the first scenario where it's just all surface level?
Yeah, it takes time, right? It takes time, it takes practice, learning how to really hone in and ask the proper questions, the questions that are going to give you the insight that you need. That's what you need. That's what you need to focus on, and that's where you need to sort of build towards. But the main difference between scenario A and scenario B is it's not product knowledge, it's not talent. It really is demonstrating that you've listened in the past and you cared enough that you're checking back with them. Demonstrating that you're listening and caring enough to check back, that's going to instantly win you brownie points. It's instantly going to earn you some of those trust deposits into your bank account.
Yes, exactly. Your bank account will be overflowing with trust.
Well, let's hope so. We want to get there.
So. All right. So it's been a great conversation today so far, but I think we need to kind of wrap it up with a good challenge, as we close this out. So, before you guys fully, check out and say this was one of the best episodes you've ever heard, and just, all the fabulous likes and such, we want to make sure you do something on your next call. Not a week from now, not 4 weeks from now, but on on your next call, tomorrow, perhaps, Monday, whatever the next call would be, sometime this week.
Yeah, I think, if you just pick one relationship that you want to grow, that's a good place to start. Just think of one dealer who you've been wanting to connect with, you've been wanting to develop. Maybe you haven't had the success that you've wanted up to this point. I would say let's start there. Let's pick
Okay.
one person. I'm sure everyone's got a dealer that comes to their mind automatically when I say that, and focus on building some action items that are intentional towards building trust. So focus on, like tying it back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. You could pick an action item like, I'm going to reach out to this dealer and I'm going to follow up on something that they talked to me about last time I saw them, or in one of my previous conversations that they probably don't know that I remember, and let me ask them how that went. Let me try to break the ice that way. So I think that's probably a good place to start is
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And tying into that, kind of going back into episode 1 is, make sure you're do your homework on this dealer. So, for example, like you visit with them and you say, hey, I saw on your Instagram post, you guys did a homeless shelter. You put up some window shades in a homeless shelter. I thought that was extremely, really cool. It looks beautiful. You guys did a great job. Tell me a little bit about that. How did that come to pass? What did, how did you guys, get that, connection? And at that point, you're truly interested in them. They can tell you did your homework, meaning you just didn't really just show up and with the product manual say, let me read through my, product information guide today and just tell you what's going on. But it's really that you cared enough to do something prior to even getting to that meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. Definitely do your homework. Almost everyone's on social media.
Yeah, most of us are. So we said 3 actions. So Stephanie, you kind of mentioned it earlier. What if so I said I'm making that commitment to do something, and I say, okay, I will have it to you on Thursday, midday. And at that point, you show up and you do something. You don't just deliver it on Thursday, but maybe you deliver it on Wednesday morning instead.
Yeah.
So at that point, you're doing something that you're closing that loop a little faster than they expected. Again, resetting the expectations, putting that, building that bank of trust a little bit more each time.
Yeah, and I think part of that is being intelligent with your territory planning and your territory management, right? We all run into situations where at the very last minute we have a customer that has to call and cancel an appointment, or there's a meeting that we had scheduled for an hour that only ends up going 20 minutes because something else came up to shorten that time. So repurposing your time to circle back to action items like this, like, hey, you know what, unfortunately this person had a family emergency, I'm not going to be able to meet with them until next week, so I've got the next hour and a half free. Why don't I sit down in a coffee shop somewhere and get together that information that I had told the dealer from this morning that I would get back to them on Thursday, because now I'm going to look like a superstar if I get it to them later today or tomorrow.
Yep.
So
that is a perfect example. Yep. So again, I want you guys, write them down, actually write them down and do them. And then, ask yourself those questions after every call. Was it, how did the call go? What could I have done better? Improve next time, all those fun things. Creating those habits that really matter. The TSM that checks in and does some self-reflection after every call is one that really starts to win time and time again.
Yeah. And share these experiences with us. We want to know how this stuff is going. We want to know what's working out there. So, whether it's a one-on-one with your RSM and you're kind of recapping, where a meeting went well or where a meeting didn't go well, sharing it on a team meeting, sharing it on, with your peer group, like all of these experiences really help us develop and grow as a team.
Yes.
We want to hear it. We're excited to hear what's going out there. What's going on out there.
And it's not always I hit the home run. Hey, I struck out and here's why. And then you can, like Brad mentioned, you're learning from that just as much as you're learning from, if not probably a lot more at that point, because you know what you need to do something different. So great. Yeah. So, or, like I said, I know your RSMs are, ready to listen. Stephanie and I are here. If you want to reach out, we'll be more than happy to listen to your wonderful stories and the successes and some of the obstacles and opportunities that you might have that we can help you overcome and such. So
awesome. Okay, let's bring this home, Shannon.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure what time we're running at here, but let's try to wrap this all up nicely in a pretty little package before we end the episode.
Yeah.
So, kind of
All
going
right.
back to what we were saying, at the beginning, I really want to just put the thought out there and, sort of leave this impression with everyone that trust is really something that drives revenue. It's not a skill. Yes, you absolutely can have tools that will help you gain trust and build trust, but trust itself is your growth strategy. That is what's going to move the needle with your accounts. Having trusting relationships, having tough conversations, ensuring that there's some level of vulnerability, maybe not immediately, but at some point down the road, that is ultimately how you're going to grow your, the business is faster. And that's how you're going to gain share of wallet.
Right. Yeah. And, trust just doesn't just happen. Like we said earlier, it's not just chemistry. I walk up and, hey, we connected and hey, great. Now you trust me. No, it happens purposeful. It happens because you show up prepared and if you really dial it in. So you took episode 1 and you're prepared. You took episode 2, you're asking better questions. And then of course, in episode 3, you're building that commitment. You're making it clear. You do what you say each and every visit, and you're there for them and their business. And they're not just an account number for you. You
Exactly.
really make it special and important to them.
Yep. The longer you invest in these relationships, the longer you put the time in, the harder you're going to be to displace. And that's
Exactly.
just the reality of it.
No, that's true. That's true. So, so we do have our next episode in the oven. We're still cooking it. So, and we're kind of building off everything else. So, we have, preparation, better questions, trust. And so our next one is really going to show how we, sell value versus price, a real structured growth conversation that you can have with your dealers. So episode 4 is going to be a great one. So appreciate you guys. And
we will see you then.
We will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.